Our top story at 11, the mop-up continues tonight along the coastline just off Point Arguello. The spill is estimated at 21,000 gallons.
The oil spill is taking its toll on the environment. So far, 42 birds have been found oiled. 18 of them are dead.
You're looking at an endangered species, a brown pelican crippled by crude oil, one of the casualties in the Platform Irene oil spill.
Oil reached shore yesterday along a 3-mile stretch between Wall Beach and Surf Beach. 9 birds have died and at least 60 others are contaminated.
With each passing day, the severe impact human activities have on the environment threatens the survival of other species as well as our own. From different parts of the world, we hear stories of animals on the brink of extinction, yet we seldom hear about the animals in our local environment that could face a similar fate. The Western Sowy Plover and the California Least Tern, 2 birds that make Santa Barbara County beaches their home, struggle to survive in our modern world. Although both birds share the same coastal habitat, they lead very different lives. Their greatest similarity may be the forces that threaten their existence. Ultimately, it will be up to the public to determine whether these birds will succumb to the unfortunate fate of so many other species in recent times.
The snowy plover bird, I know it's a little white bird that runs around in the dunes, has nests in the dune areas, and of course this is a sanctuary for them, I suppose.
The Western Sowy Plover is one of the rarest shorebirds in California. Although not exactly snowy, they have a sandy-colored back and light underside, and are often confused with other small shorebirds, such as these sanderlings. The snowy plover's breeding areas have historically ranged from southern Washington to southern Baja California, Mexico, with the majority of birds inhabiting California. Snowy plovers nested at more than 50 areas along the California coast before 1970. Today, only 8 major breeding areas remain. Impacts from human activities and heavy predation threaten the remaining snowy plover habitat. The loss of just one of these breeding areas could be disastrous. Northern Santa Barbara County is home to approximately 20% of nesting snowy plovers, making the Santa Barbara County coastline one of their most significant breeding areas. The overlap of heaviest beach recreation in the spring and summer months with the snowy plover's breeding season is one of the primary reasons why the plover's population has declined so dramatically in recent decades. While many shorebirds probe for food with their long beaks, the snowy plover is a run-and-peck predator, feeding primarily on living things such as insects, worms, and crabs. Enduring numbing cold wind and searing hot dry days, the snowy plover has evolved over millions of years to successfully raise its young at the ocean's edge. Unlike a traditional bird nest, a snowy plover nest is a shallow depression in the sand, lined with pebbles, twigs, and dried seaweed to hide it from predators. After building the nest, the male plover immediately sets out to attract a mate. Snowy plovers nest in pairs and usually remain isolated from other nesting plovers. The most common sites for nests are on sand dunes, open beaches, and areas around river mouths and estuaries. The snowy plover breeding season lasts from early March through late September. Nesting begins during the first week of March, and egg laying continues through July. Females lay an average of 3 speckled eggs over a 5-day period. Parents take turns incubating the eggs for 26 to 31 days. Snowy plover chicks are not able to fly until 4 weeks after hatching. This snowy plover nest is being monitored by a specially trained biologist who takes measurements of plover eggs to determine their fertility. Non-living eggs may suggest that a nest has been abandoned because of a disturbance. These eggs are healthy and will hatch in just a few days. It's time for a new snowy plover to emerge into the world. It will take several hours for the plover to break completely free of the shell. Going from the protected environment within the egg to the outside world is a traumatic experience. But it won't be long before these plover chicks are more at home on their tiny feet. Soon after hatching, plover chicks may receive their first band if a biologist happens to come upon a nest. Colored bands are securely attached to a plover's leg and acts as their signature, so a bird can be monitored throughout its lifetime. This allows biologists to determine the number of plovers that survive into the next breeding season and to discover their migration patterns. Banding requires a great amount of experience and care since chicks are extremely fragile. Chicks are also carefully weighed, adding more information to our knowledge about the snowy plover. Plovers that have been banded over several breeding seasons can be easily identified by the colorful bracelets that adorn them. Newly hatched snowy plovers blend into their sandy environment, making them difficult prey, but at the same time extremely vulnerable to recreational activities. Within hours after hatching, chicks leave the nest and begin to forage on their own. After they hatch, chicks are protected for several days by both parents until the female leaves the family group to breed again. Males protect the chicks as they develop their foraging skills and flight feathers. It will be about a month before the plover chicks leave the nest to begin life on their own. Once the breeding season comes to an end, snowy plovers typically migrate to other areas along the western coast, while some remain year-round residents at their breeding site. The coloring of the snowy plover and its habit of crouching in depressions in the sand enable it to suddenly appear and disappear before our eyes. A plover's highly alert behavior helps it to avoid predators, such as this coyote, which is roaming the beach in search of its next meal. When their nest is threatened, adult plovers distract a predator by flaring their wings and running across the ground as if injured. There is little a snowy plover can do to protect its nest from such large predators or beachgoers unaware of the presence of a nest. Exclosure fences have been set up in some breeding areas to protect nesting plovers from human disturbance and predatory animals. Snowy plovers have adapted to defend themselves from natural predators, but more recent threats have made life for the snowy plover exceedingly challenging. The impacts of human activities have caused a drastic decline in the plover population and loss of habitat. This has created a severe imbalance between plovers and their natural predators. Human use of nesting beaches has been one of the greatest factors in the decline of the snowy plover, especially because the period of heaviest beach use coincides with the bird's breeding season. The period from Memorial Day through Labor Day falls within the plover's breeding season. Seemingly innocent activities such as sunbathing, walking, jogging, exercising unleashed dogs, and horseback riding near a nesting area can disrupt snowy plover nesting activities. If a threat is too disruptive or persistent, adult plovers may abandon their nests or an entire breeding site, leaving the eggs and chicks defenseless against predators and the elements. These activities can also crush the plover's camouflaged chicks and eggs. Litter left on beaches also attracts predators of the snowy plover, intensifying the destruction of plover nests.
It looks like somebody just, either their bag ripped and they just left it, or they just left the bag and then the bag's been tore into, which spread everything around. So there's probably seagulls and crows. All this scrap will attract coyotes and they'll come down and then they kill plover chicks.
The Western Snowy Plover was listed as a threatened species by the federal government in March of 1993. The scarcity of undisturbed beach habitat makes conservation efforts for the snowy plover difficult. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is preparing a recovery plan for the snowy plover that will identify important breeding and wintering locations and provide guidance on what actions are needed to remove the snowy plover from the list of threatened species. Protection and management of snowy plover habitat may allow the snowy plover to increase its population in light of the many challenges it faces. Biologists feel that a long-term management plan for the snowy plover is essential. This would include monitoring and research programs like those that led to the successful comeback of the California Least Tern, an endangered seabird that shares the coastline with the snowy plover. The California Least Tern once nested along the coast in large numbers. But today, the least tern is one of the rarest and most imperiled seabirds in California. The scarcity of quality nesting habitat along the coast has led to the least tern's tragic status as an endangered species. Tern colonies require expansive stretches of shoreline, but with increasing recreational use of beaches and development, their habitat diminishes quickly. Few natural nesting areas for the least tern remain in coastal California today. Long, narrow wings and a broad forked tail ideally suit terns to the graceful and intricate flight maneuvers that allow them to successfully capture fish while in flight over shallow coastal waters and the open sea. The least tern is a migratory seabird and is only found in California during its breeding season from April to September. Their destination during the winter months is not well known, but they are believed to migrate southward along the Pacific coast toward Central America. Least terns are known to feed on more than 50 species of fish. Although larger fish found further offshore may be appealing to adult terns, they are known to locate their breeding colonies where there is a seasonal abundance of very small fish to feed their young. Most often, they choose breeding sites where there are shallow waters such as bays, estuaries, and river mouths. The least tern is a social bird, unlike the snowy plover. Terns breed in loose colonies, nesting close to one another, in order to defend the colony against potential predators. The more breeding pairs there are in a colony, the more effective this technique is in deterring predators and signaling their presence to the group. A typical colony usually contains 30 to 50 pairs of nesting terns. The courtship behavior of the California least tern is fascinating. a male least tern presents a fish to a female while attempting to mate. This important part of the courtship display precedes nesting. After mating, females lay from 1 to 3 purple and brown splotched eggs in shallow depressions. Since least terns lay their eggs on open ground with little vegetation, camouflaged eggs are a very important adaptation that allow unhatched terns to avoid predators that roam the beach in search of an easy meal. Unfortunately, this camouflage can sometimes be detrimental when human activities occur near least tern nesting colonies. Unlike the snowy plover, only female terns incubate the eggs, which hatch after 20 to 25 days. Male terns supply incubating females with food, allowing females to constantly guard their nest. This tern breeding site is being closely monitored by biologists. As soon as a tern nest is identified, circular exclosures are erected around nests to protect terns from off-road vehicles and predators. 2 days after hatching, chicks begin to wander out of their nests, exploring the colony on foot. The chicks' demand for food grows as fast as they do, requiring both parents to forage for them, leaving the chicks periodically vulnerable to predators. Least tern chicks remain alert to danger signals and either hide or flatten against the ground when they perceive a threat. At about 3 weeks, young terns learn to fly and soon become experts at catching prey over shallow coastal waters and the open sea. In 1970, the California Least Tern was added to the federal list of endangered species when only 600 breeding pairs were known to exist. By 1994, the estimated breeding population had increased to 2,750 breeding pairs. This population increase over a 25-year period is attributed to better protection and restoration of least tern habitat. Today, the Least Tern Recovery Program faces the challenge of reducing an increase in predation that has resulted from the concentration of least terns in fewer breeding areas. The California Least Tern has benefited significantly from a long-term recovery program. Yet few measures have been taken specifically to protect the Western Snowy Plover. The establishment of a long-term conservation program to guarantee the snowy plover's survival will only be successful with public support and cooperation. Not every extinction can be prevented, since the death of living things is a part of nature. But we can avoid adding to that fateful outcome when we support programs that save endangered habitats and the declining species that live within them. The fate of the Western Snowy Plover and the California Least Tern depends on you. Participation by everyone is required to protect and enhance our marine environment. For more information on the National Audubon Society or La Purísima Audubon Society activities, visit the website at www.audubon.org.